Hi, this week we are going to talk about tissues. There are 4 general categories of tissue: nervous tissue, muscle tissue, epithelial tissue, and connective tissue. So we'll talk about the general characteristics of each, and then there are 11 examples of slides that you are going to have to be able to identify by sight, and then tell me the location and function of those tissues. So let's start with looking at the 4 tissue types. There are, like I said, 4 categories of tissue. Epithelial tissue, which is going to be sheets of cells that are going to cover your external surfaces. They also line your internal cavities, and they're going to form certain glands. Their job is to protect, secrete, and absorb. Connective tissue is the second type. This is the most diverse category. This is going to include bone, blood, cartilage, adipose. So just thinking about those things, you can see how different they are. So it's a very diverse category. It's also the most abundant category. So we have more connective tissues in our body than any of the other 3 types of tissues. Their job is to bind the cells and organs of the body together, and they function to protect and support. Muscle tissue is next. Muscle tissue responds to stimulation and contracts to produce movement. There are 3 types of muscle tissue: smooth muscles, which line the insides of your organs and your blood vessels; skeletal muscle, which is found on the muscles attached to your bones; and cardiac muscle, which is the muscle that makes up your heart. And then nervous tissue. These are going to be tissue that can conduct electrical impulses. They are found in your brain, spinal cord, and nerves, and they're made of 2 types of cells: a neuron, which is the impulse cell, and then supporting cells that will help nourish and protect the very delicate neuron. So we'll start with epithelial tissue. Epithelial tissue functions to protect, like I said, absorb. It filtrates in your kidneys. It plays a role in excretion and secretions when they are found in glands. The locations are in the coverings of your body, in the linings of your body, and also in glandular tissue. Epithelial tissue has some distinct characteristics to it. Number 1 is the idea of cellularity. This refers to the fact that epithelial cells are packed tight together. So there's a cell, and there's a cell, there's a cell. There's very little extracellular material in between the cells, so they form these sheets of really packed together cells. They're avascular, which means there's no blood supply, so they have to get their nutrients through simple diffusion, so things going from high concentration to low, so nutrients going across those tissues and waste products coming across. They are typically supported by connective tissues. We name epithelial tissue in 2 different ways, according to the cell shape and according to how many layers there are. There are 3 general cell shapes. There's simple squamous, which a squamous is going to look like a flattened scale-like cell. Keep saying shell, I'm destined for a beach, right? Cuboidal, which are going to be box or cubed shaped cells. They are as tall as they are wide. And then these columnar cells, which are going to be long column shaped cells, so rectangular. So rectangular versus square versus kind of flat and scale-like. So cell shape. So a epithelial tissue could be a squamous tissue. It could be a cuboidal tissue. It could be a columnar. So the shape, name, or type is usually in the name. We also name epithelial tissue according to how many layers there are. So if there's just 1 layer, it's a simple. So here's how this works. A simple squamous epithelial tissue is going to have 1 layer of squamous shaped cells. Simple cuboidal would have 1 layer of cube shaped cells. Simple columnar, 1 layer column-shaped cells. Stratified is if we have more than 1 layer in the tissue, and then we would name the tissue based on the cell type in the very top layer. So stratified squamous epithelial, stratified meaning it has more than 1 layer, squamous meaning the top layer is squamous cells. Stratified cuboidal, more than 1 layer, top layer is cubes. Stratified columnar, more than 1 layer, top layer is columns. So epithelial tissue, you can tell a lot just by looking at the name, because you'll tell how many layers there are and you'll tell what kind of cell shape it is. The first example, there are 3 examples of epithelial tissue you need to identify: simple squamous, stratified squamous, and simple columnar. This is simple squamous epithelial. So this is what you're going to want to draw on your little circle on your lab packet. Simple, okay, because there's only one layer of tissues. Squamous because of the shape of the cells. They're a little bit more flattened and round, kind of scale-like, okay? This type of simple squamous, its function is diffusion of gases and nutrients, okay? So really, really important, because we only want one layer. We want it to be really easy for nutrients and gases to get in and out of the cell, right? So if we have more than one layer, it's going to make that process harder. So simple epithelial, its job is diffusion. And it makes it good at diffusion because there is only one cell layer. Simple squamous epithelial is located in your alveoli, in your lungs. So again, where gas exchange takes place, in your kidney tubules, where filtration takes place, and in your capillaries, where also gas exchange takes place. So draw this to the best of your ability on your sheet. Here's another example of simple squamous. So again, you can see these round, kind of flat shell cells here, and there's only one layer of them. Next is stratified squamous. Here you can see there's more than one layer of cells. Here's a layer of cells, here's a layer of cells, so there's 2 layers. But the top layer is that flat scale-like cell again. So we got stratified squamous epithelium. So shape of cell, squamous, number of layers, stratified. Its job is to resist abrasions or scratches, so it protects, okay? And this is important because if we need something that's going to protect against scratches and scrapes, we want it to be thicker. We want it to be more than one layer. If we only had simple squamous, it wouldn't protect as well because that layer would easily get, brushed off or removed. So stratified squamous's job is to protect. Your skin is stratified squamous epithelial, right? Your skin is exposed to the environment. There are skin cells that you're losing every day. So we want it to be stratified in order to protect us and our organs. So your skin is where stratified squamous is located. Also the linings of your mouth. Again, think about when you chew food and you're mixing it up, though it's scraping that lining in your oral cavity. So the stratified squamous helps protect your oral cavity, and it does that because it's got those layers in there. So again, draw this to the best of your ability on your lab sheet. Here's another picture showing you stratified squamous. Here are the different layers. Okay, this top layer right here would be the squamous cells. These bottom layers look like either columnar or cuboidal cells. Last epithelial tissue is simple columnar. So you can see these long columns of cells. Each of these dark dots is the nucleus. So if we blow up one little section, you can see here's a cell, here's a cell, here's a cell. So there's only one layer, remember, one layer right here, because it's simple. Columnar is the cell shape, the long columns. Its job is to absorb and secrete. So some specialized simple columnar cells are goblet cells, and they kind of secrete mucus. They work in your digestive system. So the location of simple columnar epithelial is going to be in the linings of your digestive tract and also found in the female reproductive tract. So simple columnar. So again, draw that into your lab packet. Here's another picture showing you simple columnar. Again, you can see the long column-shaped cells, each with the dark purple nuclei in it. So that's simple columnar. So connective tissue. Like I said earlier, connective tissue is the most diverse of all of the tissues. And the most abundant, so we have more connective tissue than any other tissue, and it does a wide range of things depending on the specific type of connective tissue. It functions to bind and support, to protect, to insulate, and to transport substances within the body. Places where you can find connective tissue: bone, blood, cartilage, adipose. Connective tissue is made of fibers, so collagen, elastic, and reticular fibers. So there are cells, here's a cell, that are going to be intermixed with this network of fibers. So it's one way to kind of tell connective tissues. There's a wide range of vascularity, meaning that, blood obviously is very vascular. Your bone is very vascular. There's a big blood supply. Vascularity means blood supply. There's a lot of blood supply to your bones. Cartilage is not very vascular. There's not a lot of blood supply to cartilage. There's also an extracellular matrix. So what that means is not only is the cell surrounded by fibers, but they're also spread apart, and in between each of the cells is this fluid that kind of contains these fibers and the cells. So they're floating around in all of that outside fluid that contains the fibers and the cells. That's called extracellular matrix. The first identification you need to make is areolar tissue or loose connective tissue. Again, you can see all of the fibers here. You can see the dark cells, these dark dots, and then all of that kind of really light pink or white would be the extracellular matrix. Areolar tissue's job is to anchor skin to underlying tissues. It fills in, you can find it in between muscle fibers. You can find it surrounding your blood and lymph vessels. And you can find it supporting your digestive organs. So I would draw that into your little circle in your lab packet. Here's another picture of areolar tissue. Connective fibers are these longer, thick pink ones. The elastic fibers are these dark. It's going to give that tissue its ability to stretch and go back and recoil. And then N is just showing the nuclei of the different cells. Adipose is the next cell you need to identify. This is fat. So I love this one because it looks like what you would imagine fat cells to look like, right? Big white globular cells. Their job is to insulate, protect, and store energy. And they are located in all over your body, really. But in particular, they are found protecting your kidneys. Lots of adipose in the back of your eye. Looks like a bunch of tiny little marshmallows, right? These are packed together a little bit more than other connective tissue cells. Again, here's another picture, fat droplet. Here's the nucleus. This is the cytoplasm. And then there's these big fat droplets inside. Next is dense regular connective tissue. Its job, you can see the waves, it looks wavy and very dense. Its job is to resist force in one direction, so it helps with force absorption, and it is found in your ligaments and tendons. You can draw that in there. Here's also another picture. Again, you can see the waves. Collagen fibers are located in white. These are the nuclei of the cells, these dark purple. Next is compact bone, or osseous bone. So this is an osteon, so a unit in a bone cell. Its job is to provide very rigid, strong support. Obviously, it's going to make up your bone. The location is your bone. There's this essential canal in the middle, so I always think of these as kind of being like a bullseye. So B for bullseye, B for bone. The central canal is going to have the blood vessels coming in and out of it to supply the bone with the nutrients that they need, get rid of the waste that builds up. So you can draw that in your lab packet. And then the last type of connective tissue that you need to identify or draw in your packet is hyaline cartilage. You can see each of these is a chondrocyte here. All of the extracellular matrix outside surrounding the cells. These are found in your ribs, your nose. It covers your bones, and its function is to be a strong semi-flexible support. The articular cartilage found at the end of your bones helps reduce friction when bones are kind of rubbing against each other. But you can kind of draw that into your lab packet. So those are the connective tissues that you are responsible for identifying. The last two are muscle tissue. Muscles can respond to stimuli. They are capable of contracting, and there are three types. Cardiac, found in your heart, smooth lines your organs and your blood vessels, and skeletal is attached to the bones. Skeletal muscle, you can draw this in your lab packet. The key identification factor of skeletal muscle are the stripes. So you should see all those little stripes. We call this striations. So skeletal muscle is striated. Cardiac muscle is also striated. Smooth muscle is not. That's why it's called smooth. It doesn't have these stripes on it. All of these dark dots here are the nuclei. Skeletal muscles have more than one nuclei in it. So these are going to be found attached to the bones, muscles attached to the bones, and its job is to contract, to produce movement. Be careful, this one can often be confused with the areolar, not the areolar, but the dense regular tissue. And then last is nervous tissue. Nervous tissue's job is to send electrical messages. There are two types of cells that make up nervous tissue, a neuron and a supporting cell. The neuron is this, which actually sends the electrical messages, and the supporting cells are all the cells that surround the neuron and protect it. Neurons are pretty delicate, so all of these cells provide nourishment and help protect this neuron. You can kind of tell the neuron with a big, huge blob here, thick blob. That's the cell body. The nucleus is found in the middle. And then there are these projections that kind of come off of it. Nervous tissue is going to make up your brain, your spinal cord, and your nerves. So those are the different tissues, categories of tissues, and examples in each category. You are responsible for being able to identify pictures and or identify them underneath the microscope. So make sure that you're drawing them with as much detail as you can in order to have this to study from throughout the week. Have a great day.